Let's talk about Thanksgiving or Thanks-taking, which some of you may be familiarizing more this year more than ever on things like threads and social media. And we're going to talk some more too about why that matters for mental health. So I actually found a really helpful article from Sashi Ferris on raceconscious.org, which is a site that is helpful for parents who want to raise race-conscious children. And it unpacks Thanks-taking and privilege and what that means. So I actually would really like to share some from this and then to add a little bit on what does that mean for mental health. So about a year ago, and this was written in 2015, the week before Thanksgiving, or Thanks-taking as Sashi prefers to call it, Sashi mentioned the holiday to their daughter and told them that they were going up to their cousins and would sleep over at their house. Sashi gave their then 2.5-year-old daughter a brief summary. Thanksgiving is a holiday we celebrate to give thanks for the things we have, like food and shelter, as well as for other rights and freedoms. But while we're giving thanks, we also have to remember that not everybody has the same rights and freedoms, or food or shelter. So we have to keep fighting so that everyone has both their basic needs met and the same rights. At the time, I'd made a conscious decision not to impart the history of European migration and Native American genocide to my 2.5-year-old. I strongly felt the need to send a bigger message about Thanksgiving, but at the same time, wanted to tell this story without exposing her to extreme violence. Her daughter listened intently and asked, "Yo tengo derechos, mama?" She asked, "Do I have rights, mama?" "Yes," I told her, wondering if she knew what derechos were. "You do, but we don't live in a perfect world, and there are some situations where you might not have as many rights as someone else. For example, sometimes women don't have the same rights as men, and sometimes people who speak a different language might not have the same rights." I felt a pang of sadness, knowing that my daughter will grow up to be a woman who makes 75 cents on the dollar, among other discriminatory practices and disadvantages. On this day, which is followed by the day of the Ferguson non-indictment, I also felt enormous compassion for the parents of African-American children for having to communicate injustices that impact them so personally. A minute or two later, she asked, seemingly out of the blue, "Abu tiene derechos? Does Grandpa have rights?" "Yes," I told her, "he has rights." I paused for a second. "Alex tiene derechos?" she asked, asking me about a friend at school, a white boy. "Yes," I affirmed. "Jessie tiene derechos?" Now asking about another friend, a black girl. I paused, heartbroken by the idea of telling her that little Jessie didn't have as many rights as she did. I realized that while I had used the word derechos in Spanish, I would have used the word privilege in English. So I changed my language. "I think a better way to think about this is privilege, not rights," I told her. "We all have basic rights, but some people have more privileges than others, and we have to work together to try to change that." The conversation abruptly ended, leaving me feeling a little like I had piled too much complicated stuff into it and that it hadn't gone spectacularly. A year later, my 3.5-year-old is interested in maps, often asking where California, Argentina, and China are located, the various places where relatives of hers are living at the moment. With geography now as a starting point, I rehearsed a revised story for her this year. A long time ago, a group of white people called the Pilgrims came from Europe to what we now call the United States. They came here because they didn't have freedoms where they lived, and it wasn't fair. So the Pilgrims gave thanks because they had the opportunity to have freedoms here that they hadn't had before. And that is why we call this holiday Thanksgiving. But there were other people already living here, called Native Americans or American Indians. Over time, more and more white people came here and ended up hurting the Native Americans. So in the end, the Pilgrims got their freedoms, but the American Indians lost those same freedoms. Today, there are still a lot of people who don't have access to the same freedoms and privileges that the Pilgrims came to the United States to find. The goal is that everyone should have these freedoms and privileges, but not everyone does. For example, people who are white have more privileges than people who are Black. Whenever I watch the Thanksgiving Day parade, I'm keenly aware of omissions on the part of TV reporters of all races with regard to both U.S. history and our present-day reality of double standards. It always seems like it's more comfortable to ignore these truths as we sit down to eat turkey. So, really grateful for this post, and it helped me, I think, learn and dig more into how can we really talk about this in its most basic human way, which is just that certain people enjoy more privilege than others. And a lot of times we think about our own rights or our own opportunities or our own privilege and how we can advance, sometimes in isolation of how those things affect other people or how that might be in relation to other people. So when we're thinking about our mental health, sometimes we might be in a conversation or in relationships or at work, and our perception might be about our experience, the things that we want to be different or better for us, the things that someone else did wrong. And I'd encourage you, especially today, but increasingly moving forward, to thinking about what role do you play? Might there be people around you who you might be affecting the same way that people are affecting you that you hope would change? And as we think about privilege and we think about pilgrims, what trauma are we holding on to of any race from our ancestors? How can we continue to explore, understand, and unpack that to better understand how might we be passing on some of that trauma to others, whether it be our actual lineage or people who are different than us, people who, in order for us to attain a level of safety or rights, we have knowingly or unknowingly done injustices to, and how can we chip away at that system to start to right some wrongs? So may this article and may this conversation be inspiration for you around the table as you enjoy your meal. And this is not to say that we cannot and should not practice gratitude now and every day, but how are we going about our lives? How are our actions, our needs, our behaviors affecting others? And how can we continue to integrate more awareness of the systems that are harming so many so that we can do more and learn more to unpack that and move forward together? So I hope this is helpful for you today, a little bit of Thanksgiving or Thanks-taking inspo. Please let us know what stands out most to you and what is helpful or hurtful or areas that we can improve. And if this is helpful for a friend or loved one, feel free to comment, tag, or share. And as always, please let us know what questions you most want answered so we can bring in some mental health expertise to shed some light on anything that's most top of mind for you. This one was a little longer than our usual 5 minutes. I hope you enjoyed. And I'm wishing you your favorite, most comforting food, a bit of insight and advocacy, and a lot of love today and every day. Talk to you soon.